today's video we're going to be going over a few things I hate about my car and a few things I love about my car. So we're going to be driving up a canyon here, trying to give you a little bit of an experience, kind of what it's like to live with a modified 996 turbo day to day. So let's get started. So first thing first, as you can hear there, the car sounds incredible. I absolutely love the sounds this thing makes, either between the exhaust or the turbos. It just makes all the right noises. Absolutely love it. I know some people say the GT3s, you know, that's the true sound of a Porsche, but I think this thing with the turbos kind of sucking in and blowing out with the blow-off valves just sounds so good. I'll give you a little here. Is just absolutely out of this world. I think it's so cool having the engine behind you, just kind of raring and going, spitting fire, doing all the sorts of nasty barking and biting back there. I just absolutely love it. So number one, the sound is just awesome. Oh God, I cannot get enough of that. So, which leads me to my second point, the feeling. Driving this car is pretty special. A lot of people, you know, knock on the 996 because of, you know, various reasons, but I think this is one of the most affordable analog 911s you can get, especially in turbo form. I mean, it may not have the sort of, you know, electrical helpers and aids and those sorts of things, but that makes it so much more of a driver's car. It makes it something that you're connected to the road, you feel what's going on, you've got to shift the gears, you've got to kind of pay attention and feel what's going on. It just makes the driving experience that much more immersive. Absolutely love it. I think also, you know, going along with the feeling, this car's an all-arounder. Sorry. This car's an all-arounder. It can do everything, right? It's fast in a straight line. It can stop on a dime, and you know, for having stock suspension, it actually handles pretty well. I normally just, you know, drive it on the drag strip or in straightaways and kind of enjoy it that way. But you know, here on the canyons, enjoying the views, I don't even really have to go super fast, and I can enjoy the car. It does everything really, really well, which is nice. You don't have something that's kind of a one-trick pony. It can really hold its own in really any motorsport, or also just drive around town. I think the third thing I love about this car is the cost. This car cost, I think, $159,000 new. That was the sticker price. And now, 15 years later, I didn't even spend a quarter of that. So, I mean, the amount of car and performance you get for such a low price point, I don't really think there's much that can touch you. I think, you know, on top of that, the fourth item that I absolutely love about this car is that it gets underestimated. I haven't really done any modifications to the exterior of the car, haven't really, you know, done a whole lot that would let you know that this car makes 700 horsepower. So it's kind of unassuming, and it's fun when people, you know, think that this, sure, it's an older Porsche, but it's not that crazy. But then they feel this, and it makes people speechless, like, much like it is right now. So, you know, that's a really, really enjoyable part of owning this car. People looking at it, people, you know, at the drag strip or wherever it may be, just thinking, oh, that's just a 15-year-old Porsche, and then I show them what it can do, and they're just in awe. I think the last thing that I really enjoy about this car, hold on. Oh, God. Sorry, keep getting distracted by boost. I think the last thing that I really enjoy about this car is that it's functional. I kind of alluded to it before, but that was a lot of the reason for wanting to buy this. I wanted to buy something, you know, I wanted an all-wheel drive supercar, something that I can drive 365 days a year. I've driven this car in the rain. I've driven this car in the snow. I took it to the grocery store earlier, just kind of putting around town. I mean, as much as it does well, you know, going fast, as much as it does well going fast, it can also, you know, just putt around town. I have adjustable boost, you know, yes, it does make 700 horsepower, but that's on full boost. If I turn it completely down, it makes, you know, maybe 500, give or take, 600, something like that. And even when you're on that 700 horsepower boost setting, the car is, it's tame, unless you're really putting your foot in it and getting the RPM up to 4,000 or so when the turbo lag kind of goes away and you're reaching full boost. It's easy to drive. It can do just about anything. So I really love that part about it. So now on to the things I hate about the car. So what do I hate about the car? I think some of these are going to be my fault, as in, you know, modifications I've done to the car. So I can't necessarily blame Porsche for that. Other ones I absolutely can blame Porsche for, and it is their fault. But I would just caveat, all of these that are things that I hate about the car are quickly forgotten once I sort of get into the boost. So, starting number one, thing I hate about the car. There's a little bit two parts. So one, running E85. Running E85 is great for power. It keeps the engine safe, it keeps the engine happy, you know, everything, all good in terms of power on E85. There is a drawback. So you get roughly 30% less fuel mileage on E85. Now, the 996 from the factory never really got good gas mileage. You know, when you're on it, I think when I was just running gasoline, it was probably 13 miles per gallon, maybe. I would assume that being on it, running high power, I'm probably single digits somewhere, 9 miles per gallon, maybe. But worth it. So I think, you know, gas mileage being what it is, fine. I think also, you know, we're just gonna flip around here so I can keep going. I think along with gas mileage is just the availability of E85 where I live. If I lived somewhere in the Midwest or somewhere, you know, where you can get E85 really readily, I would be a lot happier with it. But as it stands right now, I have to drive about 35 miles to go get E85. It is all highway miles, so that's nice, but it gets, you know, 20 miles per gallon, 17 miles per gallon on the freeway. So you figure if I'm driving 35 miles home after filling up, I go through 2 gallons just on the freeway, just getting back home. I normally offset that by bringing a 5-gallon pail and just putting it in the trunk. So I'll fill up the tank and then add 5 gallons, but it's not a super easy way to go about life with a car. The second thing I hate about this car, it's a love-hate, a bit, but mostly hate. about everyone else. So there's a group of Porsche purists out there, basically those who think that anything new is bad and that Porsche should keep to the history and the heritage. So this is the same group that when the 996 came out and it had a water-cooled engine, it was pure panic, hysteria. How could they go from an air-cooled engine after, 30 plus 40 years and then switch over to this water-cooled monstrosity? So that same group has a real big problem with the headlights on these cars. Now, a lot of people say that the headlights are a fried egg style. Basically, it looks like, like if you were to put an egg in a pan and it's got kind of a runny yolk look to it. That very much is associated with the Carreras and the Boxsters of this generation. I'll see if I can put a picture up to kind of compare the two. But essentially, yes, the headlight is not the traditional round or oval style that 911 has had forever, but it's also not the runny egg yolk that everyone says. So when people, you tell people you have a 996 and they kind of go, oh, runny yolk headlights, ew, and they think that it's somehow less than. And that's a lot of what's made these cars super reasonable to purchase, because they kind of got shunned because they were so, outside of the purest form. So they're a little bit like the ugly stepchild of the 911 generations, which is great for people like me because I don't care about the headlights, honestly. Right now, when I'm driving down a canyon and enjoying, boosty goodness, I don't see the headlights. And even still, I think the headlights are actually pretty incredible. I don't think there's anything wrong with them. I think, they will stand the test of time, and if nothing else, end up being kind of a unique feature of this body style that helps this body style stand out from other generations. So I am pro headlight, others aren't, and that drives me nuts. The last thing that I hate about this car. So as I mentioned, this car was $159,000 new. When I purchased it, it was far from that. However, the biggest problem is that the parts department at Porsche, or anywhere you go really, they don't realize that it's no longer a $159,000 car. The price of the parts is just as if it were, brand new, and the parts haven't depreciated, in line with how the car is depreciated. So you run into issues like buying something that should be a relatively cheap item. For instance, I replaced the alternator on this earlier this year. Normal car, that's probably a $150 part, maybe $100 part, depending. On this car, if I wanted to buy a factory alternator, which I didn't, if I wanted to buy a factory alternator, it's roughly $1,500. $1,500 for an alternator. That is absolutely highway robbery. Or, as people who own these cars and own Porsches generally refer to it as Porsche tax. Pretty much anything you get, put a Porsche stamp on it, and it's going to be 10 times more expensive than it should be. Another good example of, now this is specific to the aftermarket, but a good exhaust system for pretty much any car can range. You can get, something off eBay for a couple $100. Something all the way from the engine back to the mufflers, roughly 10 feet of exhaust. You can get that for $1,000, $1,500 for a nice system. For this car, if you want a quote-unquote quality exhaust system, you're going to spend upwards of $3,000 and up. There are systems that cost, $5,000 if you want a titanium system. There are systems that cost, a lot in the, say, $2,500 to $3,000 range. And the reason that this is unfortunate is, the engine's back there. So really, piping-wise, you've got, probably 2.5, 3 feet of piping coming off of the turbos and to the bumper. wraps up everything I hate about this car and everything I love. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, hit like. If you want to see more, want to know more about the car and kind of the future plans I have for it, hit subscribe. We'll come back with another video as soon as we can. Until then, I'm Garrett with The Sound of Speed. I will see you on the next one.